Tasty Tuesday. I'm Daryl Minch, Family and Community Health Sciences Educator for Rutgers Cooperative Extension of Somerset County. Today we're going to make a veggie quiche. Traditionally, quiche is made with a lot of fat and ingredients, such as whole milk or heavy cream, lots of cheese, high-fat meats like bacon and ham. But today we're going to use what's on hand in the kitchen and in my house, and we're going to make it healthier with lots of veggies. You're going to need these ingredients. You need an unbaked pie crust. You need about 1.5 cups to 2 cups of vegetables, fresh, frozen, or canned. About 1 cup of cheddar shredded cheese, 1.5 cups of milk, 4 eggs, some spices, and you're ready to go. So first you want to preheat your oven to 375 degrees so it's nice and hot to put your quiche in. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the pie crust. So you have a couple of options. You can make pie crust yourself, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Or you could use, maybe you have a frozen shell in the freezer, or you have the pie dough, either in the refrigerator or the freezer, that you can roll out and fill into your pie crust. Or you can make your own. Now, many of you probably use shortening or butter, probably shortening, to make your pie crust. I didn't have any in my house, so I went to the internet and I found an oil pie crust. Now, what was really nice about this pie crust is it uses vegetable oil, flour, and salt, and you just press it into the pie shell rather than rolling it out, and saves that whole step. Once you have your pie crust, you want to keep it in the refrigerator till you're ready to use it so it's nice and chilled, and that'll help keep it nice and crispy afterwards. So we'll set that aside for the moment. Many of the recipes call for pre-baking the pie crust. That was another step. I want to keep this really simple. I'm not doing. So the idea for pre-baking is it keeps it nice and crisp when you fill it, but many recipes skip that step and the crust still comes out fine. So we're not pre-baking our crust. If you want to do that, that's fine. You'll add another 40 minutes or so to your recipe. We're keeping it simple. So we're going to use what we have on hand. So I have a lot of frozen vegetables, and the frozen vegetable I'm using today is broccoli. So the first thing you want to do for the vegetables is, if you're using frozen, is you want to thaw them either in the microwave or in the refrigerator overnight. So what I find when I buy some of these pre-chopped vegetable is that you get different sizes. So you have some big chunks and little chunks. You want to make sure that all of those are about the same. So I'm going to take out the big ones and I'm going to cut those up. Now you can use whatever kind of vegetables you want. So asparagus, peas, broccoli, mushrooms, spinach, kale, all really good. You can also use mixed vegetables. All of your vegetables give you lots of vitamins and phytonutrients. Then they also have fiber. They're low in calories without, unless you do something to them like fry them. Fresh, frozen, canned, all pretty close nutritionally. And again, we want to use what we have on hand. If you have some fresh vegetables, say you have some fresh spinach, you don't need to do anything more to that. You can just sprinkle that right into the quiche before you pour on the milk product, and that'll cook up really nicely. If you have frozen spinach or frozen kale, you want to thaw that completely and squeeze out all the extra moisture. You don't want extra moisture in the quiche because then it will not be nice and set. If the vegetables are kind of firm, let's say you're using asparagus in your quiche, you may want to pre-cook those a little bit, either steam them on top of the stove or steam them a little bit in your microwave so that they soften up a little bit and they'll be fully cooked when the quiche is done. I'm also using some mushrooms, so I didn't have any fresh mushrooms, so I'm using canned mushrooms. They're stems and pieces. I try to buy the no salt added when I buy them, and this is about 1/2 can, again, well drained. If you're using fresh mushrooms, you're going to want to saute them up because they have so much moisture in them that it may make the quiche a little bit watery, so you want to saute those up. I also like onions, so I took some red onion, about 1/4 cup or 1/3 cup, and I sauteed those up in a little bit of olive oil, so those were ready to go. The other ingredient that's used in most quiches is cheese. So cheese is great. I like it. It tastes delicious, high in protein, but it's also high in sodium. So you don't want to use too much. A lot of recipes use a lot of cheese. We're going to use about 1 cup. So we're going to shred the cheese. This is a sharp cheddar. One of the things you can do is if you use an extra sharp cheese or a really strong flavored cheese, you don't need as much because you get that full flavor profile without the added salt that's in a lot of cheese, and it reduces the fat in your dish. So we're using some nice sharp cheddar here. And I did a little before, so just a little bit more provolone, Monterey Jack, whatever works for you. You can mix the flavors together. Would work good. I'm going to set that aside. All right, so we're going to fill our quiche shell. And I'm going to sprinkle in my broccoli. Spread that around evenly. And then I'm going to top it with some of my onion, again, spreading it around fairly evenly. Pick whatever flavors work for you. And again, the mushrooms. If you like a lot of mushrooms, you can add more. So really, if you have about 2 cups of the vegetables, that would be fine, a little more or less. You don't want to overfill the shell. You want to leave room for the rest of the ingredients. So now we're going to sprinkle the cheese on top. Okay. So we have our pie crust filled. That's got the vegetables and the cheese. I'm going to set that aside a minute, and we're going to make the custard-like filling. So I'm using 1.5 cups of 1% milk. You can use whatever milk you have in the house, whole milk, skim milk, 1.5% milk, or 1% milk. It's 1.5 cups. Traditional recipes used to use heavy cream. We don't need all that extra fat and calories. If you use soy milk or oat milk, that will work just fine. If you want to try a nut milk like almond, that's fine too. It does give it an almond-like taste, so if you don't mind that, that's perfectly well. So again, my goal is to use things that I have in the house. The next ingredient that would be added would be eggs. So it calls for 4 eggs, so we're going to crack the eggs. So I'm using 2 whole eggs, and because I have it in the house, I'm going to use some liquid egg whites. Now, the eggs are a great source of protein. It's the yolk that has the cholesterol. So if you use just whites, you can reduce the cholesterol content of your quiche or any dish. So a 1/4 cup is 1 egg. We're going to use 1/2 cup for 2 eggs. So we're reducing the cholesterol with the ingredient, but it's whatever you have in the house. Again, we're not going to the store. We're trying to use things we have at home. We're going to add about 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. You can use whatever spices you want. I am not going to add any salt to this because the cheese is high in salt to start with. You don't need any more. I'm using about 1 teaspoon of dried oregano. If you have fresh herbs, they're great. Use about 1 tablespoon or 2 to taste. I'm using a little cayenne pepper because I like to add a little heat to my dish. And then the other ingredient that I'm going to use, which is a little unusual, is 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. Now the cornstarch in this case is not really to thicken the custard, but what it does is the starch, which cornstarch is a starch, it's going to help stabilize the eggs so that they don't curdle or clump during the long cooking process. So it's a little trick, and starch helps stabilize that. And we're going to mix this up with a whisk really well so it's all done. I don't know what your favorite quiches are, so if you want to type in the chat box, you can tell us what your favorite quiche is and maybe where you're from. All right, so this is the milk, which kind of forms the custard. We're going to pour that right over top of my quiche. And I like to leave the last cup or so in the container. And what I'm going to do is I will carry this over after to the oven and put it on the oven rack. And then I will pour the rest of this in and slide the oven rack in really carefully. It keeps me from slopping the egg all over the floor on my trip over. So you're going to bake the quiche for about 45 to 50 minutes till it's done in the center. And I'll show you how to check that in a minute. The recipe, by the way, will be linked to our Facebook post later today. And we're going to put it on our website, which is somerset.njaes, New Jersey Agricultural Experiment Station, .rutgers.edu. So we have a finished quiche baked yesterday, same quiche that you have. It has a nice brown edge. If during the baking process the edges start to brown too much, just take some pieces of foil and wrap them a little bit around the edge, just like you would a fruit pie, and keeps it from over browning. To check that your quiche is done, you're going to take your knife, just a table knife will work, and you're going to insert it halfway between the crust edge and the center, like so, and you're going to pull it out. And if the knife is free of lots of egg and milk, it's clean, then the quiche is done. Take the quiche out, put it on a rack, cool about 15 minutes or so before you serve it. You can serve it warm. Quiche is great cold, and it reheats really easily. Just put it in a 325-degree oven preheated, cover it lightly with foil, either by the slice or the whole quiche, and you can reheat it that way. What I like about quiche is it's great for breakfast, lunch, dinner. Pair it with a nice salad or a soup. You have a really nice meal. So I hope you enjoyed making veggie quiche today. We look forward to seeing you at our live video on Friday at 11 o'clock and see us here on Tuesdays. Have a great day.